shortly. Last time we looked at what? What did you look at in the last lesson? Who can remind us what you looked at in the last lesson? So that we can build from there.
Yes.
Looked at the groups of the extended family.
Yes, last week we were looking at the family. So we looked at all those types of families. And so today we want to look at leisure. So I'm going to meet all of you, then you raise up your hand to say a contribution or to read content on the slide like that. Okay, so we are looking at leisure today. I will need a hand from one of you to read and take us through this slide. Yes, raise up your hand, then you will be picked. Yes, Milako. Sorry, unmute again, Milako.
Generation gap.
Yes, go on. Go on. You are muted. Read.
We are looking at generation gap.
Yes. You can go on and read. Okay, let me pick a hand from Infinix. Yes.
Gap.
Mm.
A generation refers to all people within the same age brackets. Therefore, the first generation gap refers to the differences between various age. The members in the same.
You're breaking.
The members in the same age brackets tend to understand each other better and share a lot of information. The old and the young tend to put their ages into consideration, ways of life. I've finished.
Okay, thank you. So today we are looking at leisure and we are beginning with the generation gap. So you have seen what generation refers to. So you find that the young ones have something they share in common. Even the old ones have something they share in common. But then the old and the young tend to put their ages into consideration in their social and economic ways of life. So you find that there is what the old people do and what the young people do. Okay, we go next. We want to see what causes the generation gap in a family. What causes the generation gap in a family? Some hands up. Yes, JB. JB. JB is off mic. Mike?
Yes, the causes of generation gap in the family.
Yes, you can read those points and then we explain them.
Yeah. The working patterns keep the parents away from home most of the time. This means that the children are left to grow on their own and mostly in the hands of housemaids. Some parents are conservatives or do not want to change. They insist on doing things as they were during their old days. However, life keeps changing, and therefore their ways of life may prove to be irrelevant to the young. The emphasis of children's rights is increasingly making it difficult for the parents to have full control over the affairs of their own children. This has tended to cause misunderstanding between the parent and the children. Yeah, those are the points.
Yes, thank you. So we are looking at the causes of generation gap in modern African families. So, and point number one, we are saying that the working patterns keep the parents away from home most of the time. So this means that children are left to grow on their own and mostly in the hands of housemaids. So, for example, you find that when we have kids at home, these kids are left to grow with maids, and therefore there is less interaction between the parent and the child, and that causes a generation gap within a family. Then some parents are conservatives. At times they don't want to change. We say they are rigid in the mind. They are rigid in whatever they are doing. They insist on doing things as they were done, maybe during the old ways. So they forget that life keeps changing. And so you need to change how life changes, not remaining rigid in your thinking or in the way of doing things. So people failing to change, this has caused generation gaps within the families. More to that, we are saying that there is also emphasis of children's rights is increasingly making it difficult for parents to have full control over their children's affair. For example, you find that they are saying don't beat the children at school, and so you find that they become unruly. They want to do whatever they want. No one should talk about them, and this is causing generation gap within the families. So next slide is going to be taken on by. Let me know if those 3 points were clear to you. Okay, Technospark 2 is going to read. May I know your name, Technospark 2? You're called who? Technospark 2, you're called who? Let me have Trust Hope reading for us. Trust Hope.
So the first one.
Yes, you can read this content.
Okay.
The whole of it is yours.
Okay. Some parents are irresponsible to the point that they fail to provide for the needs of their children, such as education and clothes, among others. Because of this, their children grow to hate them. I continue.
Continue and finish the whole slide.
Okay. Some parents ignore the views of their children. In such a case, the child feels neglected and develop an attitude of being less considered when it comes to making decisions. Another point, the education system tends to cause generation gap. Among others, it keeps the children away from home most of the times, and above all, makes the children develop a normal attitude. As a result, despise their parents. Another one, difference in the level of income are also causing generation gap. The adults who are always having much income compared to the young tend to lead different social and economic lives. This may create an impression on the children that their parents are not concerned about their welfare. I finished.
Okay, thank you. I see in the chat members are asking, the topic we are looking at is leisure, and then this is senior 3. Hope I've answered those ones. So the first point was that we are looking at some parents are irresponsible. They fail to provide basic needs. Now imagine you're working, you have money, but you don't want to pay school fees for your produced children. These ones are not going to like you at all. You are creating a gap within your family. And maybe you're trying to say this one is not bright, so I will not pay school fees. You are creating a gap within the family. So if you don't provide basic needs like education, shelter, clothing, you are creating a gap. And so the children will grow when they are hating their parents. Then point next, you looked at some parents ignore the views of their children. In such cases, they feel neglected. For example, you come and say, but daddy, I would like maybe on Saturday, we go to the market, you buy me this one, and then the dad will look at you maybe as if you are extravagant, or they don't want to hear your views at all. So you are like, maybe my parent doesn't love me. You feel neglected. Whichever view you give, you are not considered. You are taken low. And so when you feel low in front of your parents, that creates a gap. Then I can see hands up. I don't know what they want to ask. Let me ask from Sarva. Sarva. Sarva, your hand is up. JB. JB. Okay, maybe they are waiting to read. In case you have a question, you can put in the chat. Okay. Priska says there is segregation among children, belittled in the family. Okay. Yes, all those are good views. Then we are saying that the education system tends to cause the education system tends to bring about generation gap. How? You find that among others, it keeps the children away from home. Most of the times, and above all, makes the children develop the I know more attitude. Yes, like you find that the child who has gone to university will come home and is like, I know everything. I'm educated, maybe my parents never reached at the university. So there is that kind of gap that is created between the educated and the uneducated. Or because this one stays at school and this one stay in the villages, that kind of touch, they cannot easily have same discussions, and that causes a generation gap. Then we are saying there is differences in levels of income are also causing generation gap. The adults who are always having much income compared to the young tend to lead different social life and economic lives. Yes, of course, when the adult is driving and the young one is not driving, of course, there is a gap there. And other wealth, if someone is rich, of course, you can't have the same discussion with the poor. So when the youth are maybe poor and the adults are rich, there is a gap there. Or vice versa. If we have a young one who is, a youth who is rich and the elder ones are not rich, of course, there is a big gap that is generated there. In the chat, someone says some children feel neglected, e.g., some need phones and they are denied by their parents. Yes, that one creates a gap because you feel low, you feel neglected by your parents. That is very true. Next slide. To who? Oh, I'm going to pick Roxanne.
Yes, teacher.
Yes, you can take us through this slide. Read.
The permissiveness of our society today is responsible for generation gap. Because of the assumed freedom, some children think that they should do whatever they want regardless of their parents' views. However, the parents feel that they need to guide their children. This tends to bring them conflict. The free media today has ended up causing generation gap. Some of the programs on television stations and in the newspapers tend to draw a line between the parents and the children. The waves of soaps common today in the television stations like Don't Mess with an Angel, Second Chance, and The Two of Us, etc. from the Western world have tended to cause friction between the parents and the children. The influence of the Western culture is also responsible for the generation gap. Some parents leave their children to live independently at an early stage. Peer influence is responsible for the generation gap. The children tend to listen more to their age mates than their parents. Loss of African cultural values cause generation gap. Unlike in traditional Africa, some parents ignore their children. Besides, some children are indisciplined to the disappointment of their parents.
Yes, thank you. In the chat, I will begin with in the chat. Priscilla, Patience, yes, says parents are too busy to attend to children's needs like love. Yes, that also creates a generation gap in the families today. Okay, so the point here, we started with permissiveness. Here we are looking at freedom, basically. Learners need a lot of freedom. And because of this kind of freedom, it is creating too much gap. It is creating too much gap within the families. So parents need to guide their children, but then as they try to guide them, the children feel that maybe the parents hate them, and so it brings conflict. Thus, a generation gap. Then social media. Some television programs, newspapers. So when the children access all these ones, they tend to create a line of a generation gap between them. For example, if you find that you are watching some TV shows of the Western world, there is a way that you create something in your mind and then you start behaving differently, therefore creating a generation gap. I'm going to access the chat. In the chat, I see some parents are too mean to the point that they fail to provide basic needs. Yes, we looked at that. There are some parents who don't provide basic needs, thus creating a generation gap. I see Jesse saying Chitufu. Yes, it is. Some parents are too mean indeed. Then the influence of the Western culture is also responsible for the generation gap. Yes, you know, now we have the .com era children. So these ones cannot have same interests with the old people. There is that kind of gap that is created. The dressing code, the way of speaking, the way you greet when you meet people, all this is creating a generation gap within our societies. Then peer influence. Yes, you find that you have your friends, and these friends of yours, they are the ones who are always guiding you. You don't want to listen to the parents, and this creates a gap between the children and the parents because you are trying to listen more of your friends than the parents who are old. So this creates a generation gap. Then loss of African culture values. So most of the youth have lost their tradition, and therefore this creates a generation gap between the old and the young. In the chat, someone is asking, sir, what is generation gap? Oh, okay. You can look at that. Are we there? Let me ask Tendo. Tendo, can you raise your hand, Tendo? Tendo, raise your hand. Can I see Tendo raising the hand so that I can allow her to unmute? Yes. Unmute. Tendo, unmute. Tendo.
Hello, sir.
Yes, Tendo, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, can you read that slide? Tendo, can you read? Yes.
A generation refers to all people within the same age. Brackets, therefore, perhaps the generation gap refers to the differences between various age brackets, especially between the young and the old.
Continue. Continue.
The members in the same age brackets tend to understand each other better and share a lot of information. The old and the young tend to put their age into consideration in their social and economical ways of life.
So, Tendo, what is generation gap?
Generation gap?
I
don't know.
Hey. What were you reading? Generation gap, basically, we are looking at the differences within ages. Differences between categories of people, the young and the old, okay? So you find that if we have the youth have their own interests. They have what they love in common. Also, the old people have what they love in common. Even when we have social events, there will be differences always, okay? So we are looking at what causes that gap. What causes the youth to do?
Hear you.
You can't hear me? Members, can you hear me?
No.
Say yes in the chat.
No.
Yes, in the
can't
chat they
hear
can
him.
hear me. I think that's Tendo's network. Sorry about that.
Okay, now I can hear you.
Okay, so I think you have got what generation gap means. So we can proceed. I can see Mike's hand is up. Let me hear from Mike. Mike, can you mute?
Yes.
You have your hand up.
Yeah, not you asked that generation gap.
Oh, you wanted to answer you wanted to answer Tendo. I think Tendo joined in late. I wanted to show her how we started it. Mita chair. Is it my chair? Your hand is up.
Yes.
Yes. What do you have to say? Galaxy J4. Muhindo Esther. Muhindo, your hand is up. Benedict Daniela. Oh, Benedict and Daniela, yes, you are too. Yes, your hand is up. We can't hear you. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I think we have explained these points. So here we need to see problems in modern African families, or what we can say causes of family instability or reasons for family breakages. Causes of family breakages. These ones, I want you to give us points. Why do families break up? Why do families break up? I begin with JB.
So,
Yes.
like, I wanted to ask, like, what if I give my definition as a generation gap refers to the chasm that separates the beliefs and behaviors belonging to members of two different generations?
That is very right. It is very right. Okay. We don't have to stick to the definition that I gave you.
Okay.
So can you tell us what causes breakages in families? What causes conflicts?
Maybe misunderstandings between the family members.
Such as?
I can't tell, but maybe culture or religious.
You can pick a point. What causes misunderstanding? Of course, misunderstandings are there, but we need to know an example.
Yeah. So maybe poverty. There is poverty within the families today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let me hear from Mariam. Unmute. Mariam.
Yeah. Well, there are some children, yeah, when their parents share these words.
Come again.
when it's time for inheritance, now the father, in case the father is dead, now the children will start quarreling for the what? For the things the father has left. Then they might break.
Oh, okay. Yeah, issues of the will, sharing property when one has died. Okay. So in the chat, I can see, I will start with Tendo was saying, thank you, sir. This was my first time to study the topic. Okay. And then to continue with, Technospark to stop being funny, that don't forget put on your masks. No. I think I'm very far. Oh, sorry. Financial problems, yes, they cause family breakages. Then drunkenness, true. Health problems, yes. Poverty, it's okay. Poor relationships between partners, yes. Politics, permissiveness, okay. Indiscipline among children, infidelity, that was from Karen. Adultery of some parents, good. Holding grudges, yes. Western culture influencing family, especially the children, that is wonderful. Barrenness, okay. Moses, this one is sending directly to me. Poverty, unfaithfulness, lack of children, social instability, death of some family members, okay. Infertility, okay, all those are good points. Disagreement between the children, okay, conflicts, unemployment, failure of a specific parent to provide needs for home, okay. Poor minds, all these points, strains from parenthood, alcoholism, negative effects of addiction, okay, teen pregnancy, modern technology. Okay, I've had all these points. Remember, when you are answering this question, remember to explain all these points very well. You can give more examples. Okay, let me pick a hand from Persis. Unmute and speak.
Sir,
Persis? Yes.
So like my point was, Like sometimes like loss of a loved one, let's say like a child, can also cause like separating of a family because maybe the parents will be blaming it on each other.
Yes, that is it. Thank you. Nokia C1.
Yes, teacher.
Yes. Do you want to give us a point?
Yeah. For example, if the children get along with one of their parents and don't get along with the other.
Okay. Persis, your hand is still up. You can put it down. Even Nokia C1, put down your hand. Technospark 2, you want to tell us to put on our masks? Unmute.
So I wanted to tell you that Mr. Understanding we are talking about.
Yes.
And like,
yes.
Here we have our neighbor. Whenever like he comes back from work, he doesn't find a woman at home. Every day. So at the end, when he made some research, he finds like the woman was cheating him.
Okay. Don't tell us the name of the neighbor.
Yes.
Let's reserve
So,
that. Okay,
JB.
Okay, JB. JB.
Yes.
Yes, what's your point?
Antisocial behaviors like witchcraft. Yeah, exists in some families. Yeah.
Yeah, very true. Galaxy J7. Galaxy. Talk to us.
Can you hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you. Try to speak louder.
And unlimited time between both parents may also lead to misunderstandings, hence family breakup.
Very true. Sarah. Sarah. Muumuza Sarah. Let me pick a hand from Anzoya.
Political instability.
How? Expand them. Political instabilities, yes. Expand your point.
It also leads to family breakout, like when a war break in a certain, like our neighboring country, South Sudan. Some people, they find out that you find these people, they will be running separately. That will also lead to family breakout.
Okay. Let me pick a hand from Mariam. Mariam. Mike, your hand is up.
Yes.
Yes, Mariam.
There is marital unfaithfulness.
Yes, unfaithfulness within the partners. Okay. Mike?
Yes, my point was unemployment.
Unemployment, yes. It also brings breakages because if you can't provide the basic needs to the family, that is the end result. Okay. So thank you all those who gave their points. And so let's look at some of these causes. Poverty, you talked about it. Domestic violence. Yes, every time you are quarreling, every time you have grudges. Indiscipline among children, yes, they also cause that. You also talked about you never talked about the problem of bastard children. No one raised that. Do you know that it is one of the cause? You can say yes in the chat if you have experienced this. Do you know the bastard children? Galaxy, do you know the bastard children? Yes?
Yeah.
Talk about them.
Okay, these children, like when the couple has been, okay, like before they got married, yeah, and like the man or the woman had other children aside before they got married. So when the other person in the couple gets realized, then there's breakup of the family.
Yes, thank you very much. I see in the chat, Jovia says children given birth to when the parents are not legally married. Okay. Yes, we have had your point. Children born outside marriage. Oh, okay. All those points are okay. Okay. So these are the points to continue, add on what you have raised. There is also a problem of barrenness. Yes, you talked about infertility. You talked about alcoholism. Maybe a few talked about diseases such as HIV, sickle cells, and social behavior like witchcraft. Yes, someone talked about that. We almost talked about all these points. Then some families suffer from neglect influence, especially the in-laws. Yes, that is also a big point. Yes, such people tend to give ill advice either against the husband or the wife. This has always resulted into domestic violence. Yeah, you have heard about that. In the chat, okay, I think you are responding to the other bastard, but the points are okay. Then there are also cases of marital unfaithfulness. You talked about adultery, you talked about prostitution. All these ones, they bring about family breakages. Priska is asking that I thought that bastard kids fall under adultery. At times it is, but then remember, these couples might have produced before they met, or at times they produce, I mean, they get them when they are already married. So it's all about it. It's rotating about adultery, no doubt about it. But if you want to expand your points, you can bring it differently. Yeah, if you want more points, you bring it as a separate point. You are right. Then there is a problem of generation gap. Actually, we had looked at that. It can also bring conflicts because we have different ways of life in the same family. So there are also political differences in families, multi-party politics. You are supporting NRM and FDC. One morning we shall battle it, hence conflicts. More to that in the chat. Yes, you can check the point of Muhindo in the chat. Religious differences as a result of mixed marriages are evident in some families. Yes, you find that this one is a Catholic, marries a Muslim, and the families are not happy, so conflicts will rise. Failure to satisfy the sexual desires, especially that of the parents, this is responsible for marital unfaithfulness, which in turn causes conflicts and fights. Okay, drug abuse, taking marijuana, these are very deadly to a family. Parental negligence is a problem in some families, where you find that the children are neglected or the children are left alone to do what they want. These ones in turn will cause family breakages. Then next point is about culture crashes. Some families with mixed marriages, it becomes difficult for family members to agree on a particular cultural aspect. Then individualism and selfishness in some families is a big problem. This brings about lack of sharing and it causes hatred among others. So members, you raised enough points. In the chat, we still have other points coming up. Insecurities among parents. Maybe I can ask Infinix Hot 8 to expand on that point. Tendo, your hand is up. Tendo. 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 Unmute.
Sir, I was asking the meaning of bastard. I was asking the meaning of bastard.
Have you seen the conversation
Sir, I was
in the
asking.
chat?
Yes, teacher.
Yes, if you have seen the conversation
I
in
was
the
asking
chat.
the meaning.
If you have seen the conversation in the chat, we have explored the meaning all through. Nokia C1.
I didn't hear him.
Yes, teacher.
Yes, your hand is up.
I wanted to explain the one of insecurity among parents.
Yes, talk about it.
For example, if okay, let's take an example of Katumba's scene. Now, like, for example, if the parents, if the mother, if the wife of Katumba is really scared of being in trouble, she might break up with him and go away.
Yeah, that is very true. Thanks for giving a good example.
Right.
I was telling Tendo to follow the chat. We have defined the term bastard children very well. Check the conversation in the chat. Members have given you better answers. Tendo, let me hope you are seeing the chat. So those who have just joined, today we are looking at our topic is leisure. Then we have picked a subtopic, generation gap. So we started with generation gap. We defined generation gap. What causes generation gap? What causes the differences in ages? After looking at all that, then we looked at problems in modern African families. What causes family breakages? Then from there, members raised all the points. And so from here, you are going to take an activity, which is here. So here you have to give detailed points, like we were just giving outline. So remember to submit your work in the Google Classroom. Here is the question. If you can explain your points, at least if you can raise like 20. So how do we submit work? In the Google Classroom, go in the Google Classroom, get the work, then you answer. You can write on paper, take a picture and upload. Alternatively, if you have a computer, open like Microsoft Word, give your answers, then after you submit in the Google Classroom. If you have a question, raise your hand. If you have a question, raise your hand. Yes, let me hear from Charity. Charity.
Yes, I was asking.
Yes.
That the timetable shows we are stopping on 13th on Friday.
Yes.
Are you going to continue teaching us? Are you going to give us a new timetable or?
Yes, we are going to communicate that by the end of this week, but remember, the other week we are supposed to do end of month exam. Like if you have been studying, we need to do an exam. Then the other week we return your results. Okay, so that's why we had said the end of 13th, but more communication will be passed on. Don't worry.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome. Another person with a question, you can raise your hand. So Charity, you can lower yours. Anyone with a question? Let me check in the chat. Okay. So you do that question and submit in the Google Classroom. Let me hear from Janet. Janet? Yes. The mic is yours. Take it on. Your network is unstable. We can't hear you. Let me hear from Jesse. Jesse, unmute.
Teacher.
Go on.
Can you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Teacher, do you have a WhatsApp group? Yes.
Yes, the WhatsApp group is there. You haven't joined?
Yeah, I have not joined.
Okay. Let me see how to help you. Let me hear from Mariam. Mariam?
Well, sure. How will the exams be? How will we be doing them?
Of course, the exam will be put in the Google Classroom. We shall see how best we shall monitor you. Okay. We shall communicate all that by the end of tomorrow. I mean, by the end of, yes, by the end of tomorrow, we shall give you all the guidelines on how you will sit for the exam. Then you get marked, you get graded. Okay. Let me hear from Galaxy J7.
Are you hearing me?
We can hear you well.
What I wanted to ask is that do bastard children fall on both sides, a man and a woman, or on man's side only?
They fall on both sides. They fall on both sides, not on one side. Let me hear from Mase. Mase is not speaking, but check in the chat. I've sent a link. When you click on that link, you will join Google Classroom and you also join the WhatsApp group. So if there are no more questions, we can end our class from here. Have a great day. Yes. Have a great day.